Tonight in our Sunday Special Report, we begin a three-part series about legendary Taiwanese composer Chiang Wen-yeh. He was born in Taiwan, educated in Japan, and lived out his later life in China. At the age of 26, he participated in the 1936 Olympic art competition and received an honorable mention in a field populated by many great composers. His life was marked by ups and downs, including a stint in a forced labor camp. In tonight's episode, we dive into the life of a musical genius, focusing on his early career in Japan.
The 11th Summer Olympics was held in August 1936 in Berlin, Germany, the first modern Olympics to have an opening ceremony, live TV broadcast, and a lighting of the torch. The ceremony was newfangled, but the event stuck to tradition. Alongside sport, there were 5 art competitions: painting, literature, sculpture, architecture, and music.
Olympic 这个名词在古时候的希腊，它的确是体育竞技的意义。那么在1912年瑞典的
In ancient Greece, the word Olympics certainly referred to sport competitions. In the 1912 Olympics in Stockholm, Sweden, they added an art competition for the first time, and the two sections were considered equal, the sport and the art. The art competition was still being held by the time of the 1936 Games in Berlin. Japan sent 5 competitors to compete in the music event.
Taiwanese composer Chiang Wen-yeh was the standout star at the age of 26. His work, Formosa Dance, won an honorable mention.
当这个台湾舞曲去参加比赛的时候，西方的作曲家看到了这个曲。
When Formosan dance was in competition and Western composers looked at its structure, its composition may have seemed immature, but the Western judges saw in this work the integration of Asian and Taiwanese elements, incorporated with a certain sophistication. Compared to other works put forth at that time, which were composed by Chiang's teachers in a more academic style, when people looked at Formosan dance, which was sent to Berlin, of course they saw a style that was more in line with modernism.
Formosan dance established Chiang's talent. He was born Chiang Wen-bin during the Meiji era, on June 11, 1910, which happened to be Dragon Boat Festival. His birthplace was Sanji Township in Taipei. He grew up in a wealthy family. His father, Jiang Changsheng, and mother, Zheng Gui, had 3 sons, of whom he was the middle child. When he was 6, the family moved to Xiamen, China. At 8, he entered shoeing school for Taiwanese boys.
姜文也的爸爸，伊都做生意，做生意迄个时阵。
Chiang Wen-yeh's father was a businessman. In those days, all of Taiwan's businessmen lived in Dadaochen, Taipei. His father was called Jiang Changshen, and his business was shipping, freight shipping. I think because he was a businessman, he was probably involved in many different trades. The family was certainly extremely wealthy.
When Jiang was 13, his mother died of ill health. His father was too busy with work for child rearing. Jiang and his older brother were sent to Japan to study at Ueda High School in Nagano. Jiang was already passionate about music.
As soon as he picked up the harmonica, he wouldn't put it down. He kept playing until he had the piece perfect. He often played in the school orchestra, the violin, the piano. Ever since he was small, he was absolutely captivated by music.
As a music-addicted youth, Jiang loved to sing and had a fine voice. In 1928, he joined the electronics course at Musashi Institute of Technology. But all he could think about was music, and he took extra classes at Tokyo Conservatory of Music. But bad news soon came from Xiamen. Jiang's father had had a stroke. Money became tight for the family, and Jiang had to take on an evening job.
家道中衰，并没有那么多的金源来协助，所以他必须在他念高工的时候，他必须去打工。
Their fortunes fell, and there wasn't much money, so while he was at college, he had to take an evening job. He had studied basic music theory, so he went to Columbia Records to copy music. Lots of musical groups needed extra copies of the violin and cello parts, so his first job was transcribing music. And he learned a lot of general musical knowledge through the transcription job. The school sent him to work in a printing factory, but he didn't really like that. So he went and auditioned in many places because he had a lovely voice. So he went and tried out for many choirs.
他大学毕业当天，刚好看到
On the same day he graduated college, he saw Columbia Records wanted to hire singers, so he ran to apply for it in his college uniform. He got it and put out a record immediately. In those days, records were called shellacks. It was a 78 RPM shellac.
"为什么这张唱片这么快就能够发行呢？国策，在战争时代就是国策。
Why was the record launched so fast? It played into wartime government strategy. It would only work like that for government and military strategy. That's why Jiang was famous overnight.
His rich voice delighted the company. Jiang Wenbin decided to adopt a stage name, Chiang Wen-yeh, or Bunyeko in Japanese. In 1932, at the age of 22, he entered Japan's first national music competition. He was nominated for the vocal prize, but the judges didn't award any grand prize. The next year, the same. He got a vocal nomination and no grand prize was named. After receiving these honors twice in a row, he caught the attention of the Fujiwara Opera and was hired as a baritone by the group.
因为藤原一江当时就算是东京非常好的一个就是演歌剧的团体，对，那其实他在里面也是达到非常好的角色。
At that time, Fujiwara Opera was one of the best opera groups in Tokyo, and he had a great role, so he got quite directly into the Japanese music scene. He also had a genius for composing. In 1932, he got into Fujiwara Opera with his voice, and that November, he declared in an essay for a musical society that he'd become a composer.
Not content with his vocal theory knowledge, Jiang found a teacher and dove into composition.
我认为他是非常非常的用功，他不仅练声乐的时候很认真。
I think he was extremely diligent. He wasn't just sincere in training his voice. To study composition, he taught himself, but he also went to classes with a teacher. His teacher was Kosaku Yamada, who was one of Japan's finest musicians. His nickname was Japan's Music Mogul, so his status was #1 among Japan's musicians. But everyone in Japan's music scene knew that the two had very different styles, so Jiang didn't study with him for very long.
Jiang devoted himself to composing. Many of his early works have a profound Oriental flavor.
All this is Oriental. He was always deeply influenced by Japan. This is a simple Oriental tune from start to finish.
In 1934, Jiang joined a musical group that toured the provinces. They toured Taiwan, and he was deeply touched by seeing the sights and sounds of his homeland, writing his first piece for piano, Night in the City.
那从台湾的巡回演出里面，当然给他很多的刺激，很多的看到自己生长的地方或自己的故乡。虽然他在这里没有真正的在这边成长，可是对他来讲
Of course, performing on the tour in Taiwan was very inspiring for him. Seeing the places where he grew up, his homeland. Although he didn't spend all his youth here, for him, the culture and the lifestyle instilled in him from his mother and father made all this feel very intimate and natural. After he toured Taiwan in 1934, he went back to Japan and wrote a piece. It had a prelude, Fantasy of the White Egret. Then, listening to the mountain tribe speak, and Night in the City. Night in the City was eventually rearranged into Formosan dance.
As he was enjoying exploring composition, Jiang also fell for a woman, Nobu Takizawa. She was a girl from a rich family in the city of Ueda. Jiang was just a poor singer and a second-class citizen from a colony. The Takizawa family fiercely opposed the match.
もうどうしようもなく、どんなに私が地球の果て逃げていこうと、どこ行こうと、もう死ぬまで追っかけるっていうんです。
There was nothing for it in the end. He even said, "If you run to the ends of the earth, I will follow you." I thought, well, he likes me so much and he's not a bad guy. Taiwan was a colony of Japan then, and he was Taiwanese, not Japanese. My family didn't want me to marry a Taiwanese, so I decided to elope.
In September 1934, Takizawa and Jiang eloped. She took with her some valuable jewelry. After their marriage, he devoted himself to work, but everything was expensive: pens, manuscript paper, record players. Takizawa had to sell her jewelry and took on sewing work to help make ends meet. Jiang stopped auditioning for singing work. He focused on composing and quickly won silver for composition in the 3rd National Music Competition. He was also nominated the following year, then won silver 2 years in a row. In early 1936, a snowstorm hit Tokyo, the deepest snow for 50 years. During that snowstorm, Jiang returned to the work called Night in the City, inspired by Taiwan. He rearranged it into a symphonic piece and renamed it Formosan Dance. It passed a selection committee in Japan, and beside works by 4 other Japanese composers, was sent to the art competition of the 1936 Berlin Olympics. That piece, the first real work by 26-year-old Jiang, produced after less than 4 years composing, beat Japanese professors and rivals from across the world to win an honorable mention.
他脑筋里面一直非常多的旋律，他是灵感出来他就写出来。
He always had lots of melodies in his head. Inspiration came and he just wrote it down. The recognition of those great composers in Germany was what made him the happiest. He had entered lots of contests, big and small, in Japan, but he had never won first prize. It was because he was from the colony, so he could never win more than second place.
Jiang could not be truly feted in Japan, even after his great success at the Olympics. Japan's media gave his win a muted reception, but it was huge news in Taiwan. Frustrated with second-class citizen status, Jiang accepted a job from Taiwanese musician Ke Zhenhe, teaching at Peking Normal University. In fall 1938, he boarded a ship for China, where he would be inspired by classical Chinese music as well as by another tumultuous love affair.